I'm Dr. Yvonne Cason, the president of Spiritual Awakenings International. It's wonderful to have you all here. As you probably know, Spiritual Awakenings International is the first international network that focuses on raising awareness on all types of spiritually transformative experiences. We are absolutely delighted to have subscribers in 103 countries right now. We're just absolutely delighted. I'm very pleased today to introduce our featured speaker, who is Cindy Bain, RN. Cindy started her career as a registered nurse in the NICU and PICU of Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto, Canada, where she also published medical research. She has an honors degree in psychology and health, but she is now a non-practicing RN. She founded her own energy healing business, Cindy Bain Recharge with Reiki, and is an energy healing expert of over 22 years. Spiritually transformative experiences are a routine part of Cindy's life. It is my great joy to introduce Cindy Bain.
Thank you so much, Yvonne, for that lovely introduction. And I'm really excited to be here today at Spiritual Awakenings International to share my personal journey with all of you. And so the title of my talk is Awakening the Mystic Within, a Contemporary Journey. I will be starting by just giving you an overview of my talk, and then I'll share some of my spiritually transformative experiences. This, again, is just to give you a general idea of where I'm heading with my talk today. I'll start a little bit, or I'll start right away with my journey, but just a very short explanation starting in childhood, and then I'll share 5 of my spiritually transformative experiences, most of which are mystical experiences. And then I will leave you with some takeaways to consider. And so let's start. At the beginning. So this is a photo of my mom, my sister, and myself visiting my dad, who is sitting up in his hospital bed after his first heart attack. So that's me at the bottom of the photo, and I am looking up adoringly at my dad. I am only 5 in this photo, and he's 24 years of age, and none of us at this time know that our world is going to be turned upside down in 3 weeks' time. On that day, 3 weeks later, I was home from kindergarten and spending time with my dad. And no, I wasn't sick. Back then, this was in 1970. I lived in the country, and so you'd be picked up by a school bus. You'd be taken to school full days, and so I only went every other day. So on this day, I was home with my dad, and I was entertaining him. He was entertaining me, and we were having lots of fun. At some point, he said to me that he had indigestion, and he asked me to go get him some ginger ale from the kitchen. And I tried my best, but I wasn't strong enough to get the cap off the bottle using the bottle opener. So I decided I would go back to the bedroom and get him to help me out. And once I got to the bedroom, he was turning purple and gasping for air. So I ran to my mom in the next room. She was cleaning. She came. He was taken to the hospital, but he did not survive this second heart attack. At the time, my 5-year-old self thought I was responsible for his death. If I had given him the ginger ale when he asked for it, he would still be alive. And I know as an adult, this absolutely isn't true. However, this is what I thought as my child self at 5. So it was 1970, and maybe you picked up on that from this photo with our clothes and our hairstyles. There wasn't any type of support system available like grief counseling at the time. In fact, there wasn't a lot of talking about things or even sharing feelings in general in 1970. So I had no one to talk to about what happened to me and how I felt. And so I was on my own. To be fair, the adults around me had no idea that I had the experience that I did, and that I felt as if I failed my dad by not getting the ginger ale to him to make him feel better. And they had no idea that it broke my heart. I carried that burden forward in my life. Even so, at 5 years of age, I was being spiritually guided. Our family lived in rural southwestern Ontario, Canada, and I will just say now that all of the locations that I shared later within my talk are all in the province of Ontario within Canada. We were fortunate enough to have a beautiful forest that was a part of our property. And my 5-year-old self would walk into that forest, find a spot beside a tiny stream, and rest my back against a beautiful birch tree and talk to God. I was raised Christian and attended Sunday school in the nearby village. I certainly was not angry with God at all. I was simply looking for comfort to ease my grief. I adored my dad, and now he was gone. Being surrounded by nature actually comforted my soul. And I know I was drawn there by my spirit guides and intuition to help me begin to understand my spiritual nature. Having experienced the loss of my dad, it gave me a knowing that I wanted to dedicate my life to helping others. I know that the nurses in the hospital that cared for my dad were wonderful people. And I do remember thinking, I want to do that when I grow up. So this idea stayed with me, which led me to my career in science. Out of high school, I went straight into nursing school. This was an intuitively guided decision, and through a series of synchronicities, I was hired fresh out of nursing school as a graduate nurse into neonatal intensive care unit or NICU. I was a part of the resuscitation team, the transportation team, working with preterm babies the size of my hand. It was exciting, extremely fulfilling work. I thoroughly enjoyed my time there, but again, I was being intuitively guided to move forward and go back to school. I attended Queen's University in Kingston and got an honors degree in psychology and health. And for me, it was something to add to my healthcare background to round out my education a little bit more. And while I attended university, I worked in the pediatric intensive care unit or PICU. And yes, I did start out in NICU, but financially, I could get more shifts in PICU. And so I did that because one must be practical with their finances. So immediately after graduating, I was married and moved to Toronto. Synchronicities happened again, and I was asked to work at Sick Kids Hospital as a research coordinator. I had not even applied to the hospital, so of course it was divine intervention. Happily, the Journal for Infectious Diseases published the research, and my name appears on that paper. What an amazing research opportunity that was, and one I'm extremely grateful to have experienced. And even though my nursing career was stimulating and rewarding, my spiritual intuition was telling me it was time now to move forward into family life as my first child was arriving, and this was 1995. And so now I will move into, oh, that's not right. Pardon me. Okay, so let me just move back. And hopefully this isn't making anyone be too overstimulated. I'm not sure how that happened. So here we are, my calling through spirituality. So in my early 20s, I was wanting to dive deeper into spirituality, and the book You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay caught my attention. This was 1987. It was a recommended read by a friend, and from there, I just started reading metaphysical books. I listened to my intuition as to which ones to choose to read, but I discovered information about meditation and other spiritual concepts like angels, mediumship, and past lives, and this opened up my life. Looking back, I know it was my spiritual guides guiding me on my spiritual journey. So into my 30s, after my nursing career, I focused on raising our 3 children and being an office manager for my husband. It was extremely busy. I continue to read about spirituality, but it really only was about 10 minutes a day that I could manage to read, but you know what? To me, it was a win. I felt like I was still moving forward on my journey. It wasn't until my youngest was born, around my mid-30s, and I'm stretching my mid-30s a little bit here with the arrival of my third, and that's when I discovered Reiki. And on a knowing level, I knew this was my next spiritual step forward. I had personal healing to do from my childhood trauma of losing my dad, and this damage really interfered in my life. I knew it was holding me back from being the best version of myself. So I trained to become a Reiki master and committed to daily healing practices to help transform my life. 23 years later, Reiki is still a foundational part of my everyday life. I'm a professional member of the Reiki Membership Association out of the International Center for Reiki Training in the United States. I'm also a mindfulness instructor and a Celtic shamanic practitioner. I feel that all of these practices allow me to have a holistic view of my own spirituality. Shamanism keeps me grounded and connected to the earth and nature energies. Mindfulness allows me to study myself as I really am from moment to moment. And Reiki deepens my connection to higher spiritual consciousness and continues to heal my soul. I am extremely grateful for all 3 of these spiritual practices because all of them truly have helped me become who I am today. And with that, I will just say what brought me here today. And again, synchronicities. I belong to a consciousness book club in Toronto, and our book of the month was Soul Lessons from the Light by Dr. Yvonne Cason. Someone in the book club reached out to her and she graciously agreed to come to discuss her book. It was on that evening that our connection was made. I went home with a copy of another one of her books, Touched by the Light, and what a game changer that was for me. It gave me a framework to understand the many spiritually guided or spiritually transformative experiences that I've had throughout my lifetime. It was and is Dr. Cason who helped me understand that I am a modern day mystic. I'm both honored and excited to share my experiences with all of you in this safe space at Spiritual Awakenings International. And with that, I'll dive into why I'm here today, which is to discuss some of my spiritually transformative experiences, starting with a mystical experience called spiritual purification. This is one of my first significant mystical experiences that may be described as purification. Here is a definition. This is taken from Dr. Kason's book, Touched by the Light. And I will say that all the other definitions that I share in this talk today also come from that book. And so the definition is there's a sense of being purified, followed by a profound spiritual upliftment and heart opening. You may also even experience union with the divine. And so here is my experience. In October of 1999, during a visit to a spa, I experienced an encounter with a divine being. At this time, I was 34 years old. I hadn't trained in Reiki yet, or even started practicing mindfulness or shamanism, but I was still in my research phase, reading about various spiritual topics like angels. For the first time ever, I had booked an aromatherapy massage session for relaxation. At the end of the 90 minutes, I was relaxing on the table and was told by the massage therapist, take as much time as you need to come around. So I thought, fantastic, because I was already seeing violet light with my third eye vision or clairvoyance, meaning clear seeing. So I thought it would just take a moment or two to connect with my higher self. I had been practicing transcendental meditation for about a decade at this point, and from my understanding, when you see violet light, you're connected to your higher self. And so I thought I would just take a moment to speak to my highest possible spirit guide. Immediately, what I saw with my third eye vision was a male energy spirit guide. He had brown hair that was just a short, simple cut, and he was wearing a brown monk's robe with a hood. He telepathically let me know to drink more water. And I remember thinking, well, thank you so much for sharing this practical, commonsensical message with me. Is there anything more profound you could share with me at this time? So I remember thinking, are you my highest possible spirit guide? And I heard him say, there is one other. Instantly, I could see a very large angel wing that filled my entire third eye vision. It was illuminated with pure white light. I could clearly see details on the wing that appeared to show that it was made of feathers. The color of the feathers looked as if they were antique or off-white, giving me the impression that this was an ancient being. Of course, this was all symbolic to help me understand what was happening. I then received a download of information through my claircognizance or clear knowing. This was Archangel Gabrielle. Oh my goodness gracious me. Pardon me. There we are. Gabrielle had a personal message for me that felt like it pertained to the future because it wasn't anything that I knew about at the time. I know now this experience was in preparation for my continued spiritual growth. There was a feeling of compassion and unconditional love from Archangel Gabrielle. And for me, I feel Archangel Gabriel more as a male energy, but everyone will have their own experience of Archangel Gabriel. And now I was feeling these feelings from a pure consciousness point of view. I have no idea how much time went by, but eventually the experience came to an end. So really, I don't know how much time passed in ordinary reality, but I remember thinking, oh my goodness, how long was I in that meditation? Are they waiting for the treatment room? So I jumped off the treatment table and I got myself dressed. And as I opened the door to the treatment room to leave, the owner of the spa, who had given me my aromatherapy massage, was passing by my room and looked at me. Unexpectedly, she instantly went into action, starting giving instructions to her employees. Go across the street and get her something to eat. Take her to the front and don't let her leave. And oh my goodness. I had no idea what my face looked like, but apparently I did not look like I was back in ordinary reality. It took a little more than an hour to be grounded in my body after the experience with Archangel Gabriel. This is not the end. Later that day, after driving home several hours from the spa, my husband greeted me and offered me a glass of wine. My intuition and my physical body responded, no, thank you. I couldn't explain it. I simply noticed. To put it into context, prior to this angelic experience, I would never have refused a glass of wine. At this time in my life, I was having a glass of wine with dinner most of the nights with my husband. He would have a busy day, I would have a busy day, and we would just catch up on the daily news with each other over a drink. The next morning, when I was about to start my happy day with a morning cup of coffee, my body and inner knowing again said, no, thank you. Since that day at the spa, experiencing Archangel Gabriel, the desire for alcohol and caffeine has left me. And that was 25 years ago. I know without a doubt this experience served to purify my mind, body, and spirit. Toxins from caffeine and alcohol were simply just needing to be purified in my system. So, looking back, perhaps the first spirit guide I encountered at the spa knew more than me. And of course he did. And simply was just sharing the fact that I would now be drinking more water. So there we are. This mystical, spiritually transformative experience profoundly changed how I functioned in the world and communicated with higher spiritual consciousness. 2 years later, I was drawn to work with Reiki healing energy. I know now this mystical purification was in preparation for my future spiritual work. It allowed me to become a clearer channel to receive guidance without any interference of chemicals or substances. And so there we are. So I will next be sharing my near-death experience. And perhaps more accurately, my facing near-death experience. Prior to having read Dr. Kison's book, Touched by the Light, I had no idea that a near-death experience was anything other than you died, you came back to life, and you talked about it. You shared your experience. So it was only when I came across this information in her book that I realized, oh, there was something called a facing near-death experience. Oh my goodness, I know I've had that experience. And so here's the definition. You've had a close call. You thought you were about to die imminently. psychologically, emotionally, whether or not you actually became injured later. And so I will now share my experience. Easter weekend, 2008, and I was returning to our cottage with two of our three children after running some errands in a nearby city. It had been raining, but the rain had changed to drizzle, and I consciously slowed my speed on the paved country road because my intuition reminded me that the rain made it slippery for any kind of maneuvering. This particular road had a huge curve in it, so I was just being extra cautious. As I approached the beginning of the curve in the road, nothing was out of the ordinary. And then I saw the car. It was approaching from the opposite direction and going way too fast. In the next second, I could see the rear end of their car swerving out into my lane. There was an instant knowing we were going to crash. The following second, I could feel an energy shift, a significant pressure change around me, filling the space inside of my vehicle, and time stood still. I could see 360 degrees around me. I saw the children in the back seat, oblivious to what was happening, and I could see the forest on either side of us. I could see my hands on the steering wheel, and beyond my hands, through the windshield, I saw the vehicle in front of me about 20 feet away across my lane on the road. I wasn't alarmed in any way. My heart rate stayed calm as if nothing was out of the ordinary. I felt unconditional love and support, peace and harmony, safety and security. I was seeing things from a pure consciousness point of view. And as time started again, I saw the rear end of the other car immediately swing completely out of my lane, and my vehicle passed the imminent collision as if nothing was wrong. A download from my claircognizance or clear knowing let me know that the other car with its driver was safe too. What had just happened? I carried on driving back to the cottage. It was only a few minutes away at this point, still experiencing the feelings of unconditional love, peace, harmony, safety, and security. We arrived, the kids jumped out of the vehicle and ran into the cottage without even knowing what had just happened. Because it was Easter weekend, extended family was there visiting and preparations were underway for dinner. So people were only half listening when I shared my experience. I knew they didn't quite fully understand how significant the incident was to the well-being of the three of us in my vehicle. I knew it was divine intervention. I knew it was a miracle. It really didn't matter if anyone else ever knew it. I did, and it deepened my connection to the divine. 10 minutes later, when somebody noticed we were out of milk, I volunteered to drive into the nearby village to run the errand because I was still in my coat and holding my car keys. So I was still being held in the energy of peace. I went back on the road I had just traveled, and at the same spot where the event took place, safely pulled over on the side of the road, was the car whose rear end had swung into my lane and miraculously swung the opposite direction the second before we collided. I knew that the driver was still trying to process what had happened. They had their hands on their steering wheel and were looking straight ahead as I glanced over quickly. There was no logical explanation for what took place because we were on a curve and the rear end of that car was swinging out on a curve. There was no way that we were not going to crash. Without a doubt, I know that divine intervention happened during this facing near death experience, leaving me with a deeper sense of trust in the divine. I am forever grateful for this miracle that took place that rainy Easter weekend in 2008. Next, I will share my ushering death watch experience. Here is a definition for you. This type of death watch experience is where the experiencer is spontaneously pulled out of body, seemingly to help usher the spirit of a departed person or persons toward the light. This may occur with persons that are known or complete strangers to the experiencer. This type of experience is quite common for me and a gift I accessed early along my spiritual journey. This experience that I'll share with you today is special because of the scale of those that were helped. This particular ushering death watch experience happened while on a family trip to Manhattan, New York, 11 years ago. Before flying home to Toronto, we decided we wanted to visit the 9/11 memorial. It was New Year's Day or January 1st, 2014. The Ground Zero Museum wasn't open yet, but we were still able to walk the grounds. We started with the South Tower and then made our way to the North Tower. And it was truly difficult to take in the magnitude of the disaster with only the base of the Twin Towers remaining. But I do know that the energy or the feeling of the place or the space that we were at really felt respectful and honoring. And of course, there are names etched in the stone around the base of the towers there. So as our family walked away from the North Tower and made our way between the North and South Towers, I could see a woman sitting at a rest area eating her lunch. She was neatly dressed in a cardigan, a blouse, and a skirt with dress shoes. This was the middle of winter, and I was wearing a long Canada Goose coat with my hood up, gloves, and winter boots. Only I could see this woman whose soul was confused and didn't know that she had died. I was familiar with the practice of crossing souls into the light because I had been doing it for over a decade at this point. I knew that I was needed, and so I asked my husband to continue walking with the children because I needed a moment. And bless my husband, he never asks questions. He just carried on with the kids, and if I needed a moment, that was okay with him. So he carried on with the children, and I did my thing. And so I went over to the north side of the South Tower, and I placed my hands on the stone surface. No one was around me. I had my hood up, of course, and I closed my eyes. I could clearly see this woman with my clairvoyance, and I reached out to her telepathically. She wasn't a victim of 9/11, but she had worked in the area when she was alive and spent her lunchtime eating in this place. It was her happy place. She was actually unaware that 9/11 had happened. She appeared to be in her early to mid 30s from a past era, and I worked with her to assist her into the light. I facilitated the process in a specific way, and this is how it was um, in 2014. Now it's not the way it happens anymore, but this is how it happened then, where Archangel Michael and his band of mercy come. There's a pure white whale with two dolphins on either side of the white whale. They come to escort the confused soul into the light upon my request. And so in this case, it was for the woman who was eating her lunch. She sat on the white whale with her hands on the dolphins for support, and then she rode the whale into the light. I am able to partially see into the light once departed souls cross over and where they go from there. And so for me, I see a platform receiving area. This is all in a pure white light realm where the souls first arrive before they are triaged. So some souls may go into the area of restoration and rejuvenation. They may then go to the area of learning and then join their loved ones deeper into the light. Others simply just go to the area of learning and to their loved ones. But still others go straight to their loved ones and into the light and disappear from my view. This particular woman needed to go to both the area of restoration and rejuvenation and the area of learning before she joined her loved ones in the light. Once this happened, I could now clearly see that more spirits were approaching me from my right side. And I could see they were 9/11 victims, and I knew they were looking for help to go to the light. One was a fireman with his suspenders, pants, and boots, but no helmet or jacket. He was the first to approach me as more and more spirits from 9/11 came closer and closer. I had never been asked before by my divine guidance to work with so many spirits at once. But without hesitation, I did what I needed to do. So at first, I was a bit confused because I had only ever done this work with individual lost souls, one after another, maybe up to 15 during a Reiki session, but never the numbers that were being asked of me now. And so I just relaxed into trust and knew I would be divinely guided. 10 white whales with their accompanying dolphins appeared, accommodating 10 spirits on each whale. En masse, 100 at a time, they were being crossed over into the light. Sometimes I could see grateful souls turn around and wave to me before they disappeared out of my view with their loved ones. This continued for 10 to, it's hard to judge time, probably 15 minutes. The spirits of the lost souls were not just limited to the lower Manhattan 9/11 disaster. The others that were lost in different locations associated with 9/11 were also coming to me now, like the victims at the Pentagon and the flight that went down in Pennsylvania. I continued to do the work until all who wanted to go went to the light. The final soul that crossed that day was not associated with 9/11. He was a tall, lean man with a hat that looked like it was from the 1920s, and he was dressed all in black with his hands in the pockets of his long black coat. He came from behind me and said telepathically, "It's time. I'm ready." He had been lost for almost a century, and after watching the other souls going into the light, he felt he was now ready. He seemed relieved to be finally going. He had been stuck because he felt guilty from the life that he led while he was alive in the 1920s, but now he trusted me to assist him with his transition into the light. In total, there were over 2,500 lost souls that were taken to the light that day. And with that, I will move in to another spiritually transformative experience called mystical visions. And so here is a definition. They are visions of saints, gurus, spiritual archetypes, or important figures from the world's religions like Buddha or Jesus, usually accompanied by a powerful feeling of unconditional love, compassion, healing, and or guidance. One mystical vision I'm sharing with you today happened shortly after meeting Dr. Kason at the Consciousness Book Club evening. She had been asked to recommend our next book to read, and she immediately recommended The Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. I found this book extremely fascinating and many parts that deeply resonated with me. I finished this book the morning of November 13th, 2023. I remember completing the final pages and then going upstairs to get ready for the day. I was standing in the shower, shampooing my hair, when Paramahansa Yogananda came to me. I could see him with my third eye vision or clairvoyance while my physical eyes were open. He hovered at a little bit of a distance at first, and then he came closer. His hands were together like in this slide or in this photo. It took me a moment or two to process and understand what was happening. He put his hand on the top of my head, which I could physically feel, and then he said, "You are one of us." I stood in the showers with my hands still in the lather of my shampoo, wondering what that meant when he started to move back or float backwards into a row of familiar faces. I say this because the other three spiritual beings had repeatedly come to me as a group during my shamanic journeys over the previous 4 years. Paramahansa Yogananda was now positioned between Jesus and Buddha and a shaman on the other side of Buddha. I knew with my claircognizance or clear knowing that Paramahansa Yogananda was another piece of my spiritual puzzle that supported my spiritual journey in this lifetime. I now had divine teachers from Hindu, Christian, Buddhist, and shamanic practices. I honored them all and bowed automatically while standing in the shower. They all bowed to me. It was very humbling, to say the least, and there were waves of energetic tingles that pulsated up through my physical body, and I remember feeling deep compassion, unconditional love, and of course, gratitude. After the vision disappeared, it took me several minutes to process what had happened. It deeply affected my heart and instilled a feeling of honoring and being honored with love, respect, and support. This experience, or since this experience, I've had two other mystical experiences that happened more recently at the end of October in 2024, so only a few short months ago. It was October 29th, and I was out in nature for my morning mindfulness walking meditation. This was my routine. It was about 7:45 in the morning, and I was all alone on the nature trail. I remember feeling so grateful for the beautiful day. It was sunny, it was warm, which is kind of odd for the end of October. So I clearly remember this. And I suddenly saw, with my third eye vision, Paramahansa Yogananda with me on my left side. His beautiful smiling face was beaming. He took my hand and walked with me. At the same time, Jesus appeared on my right side and he too took my hand. I could physically feel their hands holding mine as I walked along the nature trail. This mystical vision lasted for about 20 to 30 seconds. I felt surprise that turned into joy with tremendous gratitude for the spiritual visit in ordinary reality. Oh my goodness, did I feel extremely blessed on this morning. The very next morning, October 30th, at the same spot on the nature trail, I tended not to, I always went the same route. So the same spot on the nature trail, I was again visited by Paramahansa Yogananda and Jesus, who took my hands and walked with me in the same way as the morning before. I felt, again, humbled and grateful to be having these mystical visions, and I knew they were happening for a reason. I was being shown that I was divinely guided and supported. I was completely aware that these experiences were serving to deepen my own trust in the divine. These particular mystical visions have happened since meeting Dr. Kason. She is the one to introduce me to the work of Paramahansa Yogananda. I had no conscious prior knowledge of this spiritual teacher who is clearly guiding and supporting me now. Also, after reading her books, I now have a valuable framework to use when I have spiritual occurrences, because it now allows me to look more deeply into my own experiences and to be able to describe them for everyone else or anyone else. Previously, these experiences were very private, sacred experiences, and while I remembered them, I never analyzed the details of them or even labeled them because to me, they were just something that happened in my life and I accepted them without any explanation. Dr. Kason is providing a valuable framework of terminology to help all of us better understand spiritually transformative experiences. The first mystical vision I share today happened during a time when I was first introduced and equipped with this new knowledge or framework, and it was the start of my journeying of labeling, understanding, and now sharing spiritually transformative experiences. I'm now moving into the final experience I'll share with you today. This is a mystical experience. It can be classified as a unitive experience. And here is a definition. It's a feeling of union with God, the divine, the universal consciousness, or with universal life force. It's an experience of merging into oneness of all things, a feeling that one's life is unlimited with the universe or connected to all creation. This experience on January 19th, 2024, about a year ago, was facilitated by a Reiki session. In this session, I prepared myself in a meditative state as if I were to give a Reiki session. This sort of helps gain greater Reiki energy into the experience that I have, and then another trusted practitioner works alongside of me. On this day, as I finished my preparation, with my eyes closed, I immediately saw, with my third eye vision or clairvoyance, a white light realm and numerous angelic beings coming to surround me as I relaxed and was ready to receive. These joyous angelic beings reminded me of the group of light beings that came to me a few months earlier on October 3rd of 2023 for that unitive mystical experience. They were crowded in close to me on this healing table that I was on in this spiritual realm. And I knew, again, with my claircognizance, that they were there to witness something that was about to take place for me. Next, I saw a wide beam of white light shining down on me from above, and it filled my third eye vision. It was so bright that in this spiritual realm, I almost felt as though I needed to squint. It was so bright. I waited and I watched. There was a divine being that was descending out of the light toward me. It felt like a feminine energy and was dressed in a flowing white gown. She glowed as she got closer to me. Then I received the download from my claircognizance. This was Gaia, the Greek goddess of earth and also mother of all life. Now, golden light was shining out of my own heart center. Gaia telepathically said to me, "It's time for your heart to open to its full capacity so the world can see the love that is coming from you." She took my hand in the spirit realm as I laid on this healing table, and her energy felt so nurturing, so supportive. And I knew she was guiding me to open my heart. I became aware of the witnessing that was happening by the light beings in attendance. Guy asked me telepathically if I was ready to open my heart. Yes, of course I was. I could now see the light beings holding hands with each other in a circle around me, supporting me in this heart opening experience. With my claircognizance, I knew this was divinely ordered. It was time. There was nothing that I needed to do except to allow. I was to release energy that was in the way or blocking this heart opening experience from happening. So, of course, I agreed. A feeling of joy started to come into my heart, an awareness that the need to heal my child self had risen up because that child self was still deeply wounded by the loss of my dad. I had a broken heart. Suddenly, my dad was there with me as my child self. He took my hand and he said that he was so proud of me. He continued to hold my hands, but now I had transitioned into my adult self. He said that he had never left me and that our bond was unbreakable. At that moment, it felt as though my heart had opened and I was achieving some sort of goal. It was more of a vague knowing. And then the clarity came. It was my life's goal. I had achieved the virtue of compassion in Buddhism. My awareness was now back at the sacred healing table. I sat up and got off, looking to the right because something had caught my attention in that direction. I could see an extremely large angelic being. Its pure white light wings were so large that they expanded beyond my third eye vision. That vision only lasted a moment before I saw Buddha. He looked like he was in his 30s. He was fit and youthful with a long sleeveless robe. He was standing on a platform waiting for me and had something in his hand that looked like a scroll or a ruled certificate that was tied with a ribbon or a cord or something. I made my way over to him and he smiled. I could feel his joy. The energy from the light beings around us felt like they were celebrating this achievement. Buddha handed me the certificate, and he took both of my hands and said, "You have walked the right path. It's time for you to receive what's yours." Suddenly, doors opened above and behind me. A short set of white stairs also appeared, leading to a platform. That platform led over to the left to an arched stone doorway. Beyond that was pure white light, a direct passage to the all that is. Buddha smiled and hugged me and then stood back to let me ascend the stairs. Telepathically, Buddha said, "You have earned this easier access to the all that is." I walked through the stone arch doorway and deeper into the light. As I stepped into the all that is, there was an energy shift and I was back in a familiar place. I had first consciously visited the all that is in October of 2023. I have recounted that mystical, spiritually transformative experience when I spoke at Toronto Awakening Sharing Group in March of 2024. This time, there was that same sense of being home. I felt the fullness and the expansiveness of the energy. I was perfectly content in the silence. And then a vague prompting started to come to me. I knew I was limitless and that I could experience anything. Immediately, I was experiencing what it was like to be a chick inside of an egg. I could see it and I could feel it. I emerged from the eggshell, and in the next moment, I was a fluffy yellow hatchling running around. And this only lasted 2 to 3 seconds. And then, seamlessly, I was a wolf pup being born. And then a foal or a baby horse being delivered by its mother in a field, and then standing up wobbly on long legs. I transitioned into a rock and experienced what it felt like to be a rock near a tree in a country meadow, quiet and still. Then I was a grain of sand, peaceful and calm, gently shifting about in shallow, crystal clear water. I next experienced what it was like to be a human baby, about 6 months old, inside of its mother. Seconds later, I was flying as a bird, soaring over a meadow in the sunshine, and then riding the air currents next to a cliff. I shifted into a dolphin, swimming with my pod moving fast in the water, feeling the deep sense of community. Then I was a whale in the ocean, moving slowly, gracefully, and serenely. I was then back in the pure white light realm and became aware of a subtle prompting or guidance to feel what it was like to be Buddha. My experience didn't seem to change. I continued to feel expanded and complete. I was starting to remember or grow in my awareness. I then realized the inner prompting wasn't to move into an experience of what Buddha felt. I was to understand that I was feeling what Buddha felt, a level of enlightenment. Other experiences happened during this time in the All That Is, including a healing for Mother Earth. And of course, my own continued remembering around my personal path of spiritual growth. As this experience in the All That Is came to a close, I moved out through the arched doorway that allowed me to enter. I went back down the steps that I had ascended after leaving Buddha, and I made my way back to the sacred healing table with all of the light being witnesses. I transitioned from the healing table into a white light spiritual realm and then into a starry sky in the universe. I was returning gradually to ordinary reality. The experience lasted 2 hours. Once back to the Reiki table and back to the body, it took me a further hour to feel grounded again. And I continued to integrate the experience for days and weeks to come. This experience, or since this experience, I have also visited the All That Is several times. All of them are highly personal and tremendously transformative. I'm grateful on a daily basis for the spiritual or spiritually transformative experiences that I have as an experiencer. I am deeply committed to my own spiritual journey and the amazing spiritual adventures it has taken me on in my own life. Now that you've heard some of my experiences from today, I will leave you with a few takeaways to consider. We are all spiritual beings. When we accept this, we can better understand the spiritually transformative experiences that are happening to us, for us, with us in a greater capacity that helps to move forward in our own spiritual journey. I'm not exceptional. Everyone can have a spiritually transformative experience. It's a matter of recognizing the experiences and not dismissing them. Embrace your spiritual self. It's a necessary part of what makes you whole, and it can deeply enrich your life. And another takeaway is utilize resources that are available, like Dr. Kasan's books, and in particular, Touched by the Light, which is an absolutely amazing resource book to help you understand these experiences. They allow us to speak a common language when having spiritually transformative experiences. Coming together in a community with a common language is absolutely essential for our spiritual growth and evolution. Spiritual Awakenings International is that safe space community, and I am tremendously grateful to be here today and to be able to share with all of you. So thank you. Here is a quick peek at references, which I know you saw earlier, and I'm so sorry about that when I had to scroll back. But here are quick references that I used. And then I would like to thank all of you for listening today. I absolutely appreciate all of you and your time. For those that are attending live and for those that are listening later, I thank you so much. If anyone feels drawn to contact me, my website is cindybainreiki.com. My email is cindy@cindybainreiki.com. You can find me on social channels at Recharge with Reiki. I would like to personally thank Dr. Kason for leading this valuable organization along with Robert Bear and the many volunteers that help to make this organization function and help us all come together and connect worldwide. I thank you so much. And now I do believe that we were moving into the Q&A portion.
Thank you, Cindy, for an absolutely, oh, sorry, the light is whitening out my face here. Thank you for an absolutely fabulous and fascinating presentation. You were so eloquent in describing your multiple mystical experiences and spiritually transformative experiences. Thank you so very, very, very much. We do have a few questions from the audience. So I'm going to start with the first question from Renee. And Renee asks, she actually has several questions. And people, if you have questions, please put them in the chat for Cindy. I'll be happy to ask them.
Mhm.
And Renee is asking, when you say you see things, do you say it is through your third eye, mind's eye, or is it through imagination or thought? Is it like you when we see on a telephone, or is an external word? Can you describe a bit more about how you see things, like your mystical visions?
Okay, so thank you, Renee, for asking that question. So for me, my strongest clair sense is clairvoyance. So I visually see things. It doesn't have anything to do with my thoughts or logic. This is always divinely guided experience, spiritual experiences. And so I visually see things, and clearly I've shared with you many stories that it doesn't always matter if my eyes are open or closed. I see things. And so um I not everyone has clairvoyance or clear seeing as their gift. You may have a clear sense that is more with your auditory senses, or just a download of knowing. So you suddenly know something, or you sense it with sentience, where you feel it in your body, or you there are as far as I know, nine clair senses, and so some people smell things, smell colors, smell things, or they taste things. So for me, clairvoyance is my number one. Clair, I do have all of them, but my most powerful is clairvoyance. I sometimes I see it sometimes as a story. So it may show where the storyline continues, and it makes, if we were to bring logic in it, I don't really want to, but for someone hearing about it, it would maybe make more logical sense. Other times it's little vignettes of images, and my guides are so they show me the image, and there's always discernment. I never just blurt out the first things that come. It's been decades of discernment around the messages that I get, decades of trusting, and from the stories that I've shared, many ordinary reality experiences that have deepened my trust in my divine guidance. And so I have developed discernment around the images that come, if it's just an image, or the storylines that might come. Yes, it might look like television image sometimes. Sometimes it's in color, sometimes it's not. Um, Again, you know, everyone that I work with has a different energetic frequency. And so wherever we are in the energy is where I meet the client at. And so that's the energy that we work at. And I don't mean that's the healing energy that comes through. Please don't misunderstand me. Just the images that I see are more relevant to the person that I'm working with, how clear I see it, or yeah, if it's in color. I hope that answered your question. Does that feel like it was in depth enough?
I I think that that's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Robert, you actually answered a couple of Renee's questions there. Robert has a question on a slightly different angle. Robert would like to know, have you ever had any other angelic experiences with angels other than Archangel Gabriel that you talked about?
Oh, thank you, Robert, for asking that question. Yes, absolutely, I have. I work with Archangel Michael a lot, and I know that Archangel Michael has intervened in my life. Something that I will share with you is that in 1993, my husband and I moved to Toronto. It's the largest city in Canada, and so I didn't grow up here. I grew up, in southwestern Ontario, and so for me, I prided myself on being street smart. And so I was working at Sick Kids at the time, and I'd gone home. Our condominium, of course, synchronicities. We didn't know I was going to be working at Sick Kids. And don't we rent a condo 2 blocks from the Sick Children's Hospital? So I had gone home for the day, and not for the day, I'm so sorry, for lunch. And on the way back, I knew I needed some cash for something that we were doing later in the day. And honestly, less than 5 minutes away from our condominium was a bank on the corner of a very, very busy intersection in Toronto, University and Dundas. For those of you that live in Toronto, you would know that intersection. It's busy. I'm not even sure if that bank is still there. 1993, we're talking about here. And I thought, I'm going to be street smart and I'll put my bank card for the bank machine in my pocket so I don't have to open my purse and rummage through. And so I was walking confidently um, to along the sidewalk before I had to like make a 90-degree turn. The bank is right there. I thought, I'm getting ready. I don't want to take my card out too soon. I don't want people to see that I have it. And as I turned the corner, I saw this man. He was about 6'4", 230 pounds. He was resting, facing me, resting, meaning sitting on this wall that was separating the sidewalk from the stairs that go down to the subway platform. And as I turned the corner, we locked eyes for, it felt like too long. It was probably just a second, but there was an instant knowing, oh, this is not good. But I didn't want fear to take over. So there was just that instant of seeing him. I needed to take about 4 more steps to the slot where you put your card in to let you enter. The bank had already closed at this point, so the door was locked. You needed to put your bank card in to unlock the outer door to get to the bank machine inside. And so I turned from him, took about 4 steps, and now I've taken my bank card out of my pocket. And as soon as I took my bank card out of my pocket, he was behind me, over me, and he was taking the card out of my hand. And he said to me, "Let me help you with that." I don't need help with that. I knew I was going to be robbed. He was fully over my entire body. He's bigger than me, taller than me. And he put the card into the slot, and there's 2 lights, green and red. And he put the card in the slot, and the red light came up. And, this is all happening within seconds. And he pulled it out again, and he put it in a second time, and the red light came on. And my guide said, well, like there was just this inner strength that just filled me up. And I grabbed the card from him and I said, "Thank you." And I just scooted out from underneath him. He's massive over me. I scooted out and I'm walking down the sidewalk and I'm going, what? I was almost just robbed. Do I call the police? But he didn't actually rob me. Like, what just happened? And Sick Kids was only 2 blocks away. So I got to Sick Kids and now I'm calming down a little bit more. I didn't full on run. I'm in like a business suit kind of a thing, but I probably was walking fairly fast and I got to Sick Kids and the realization came to me, I still needed money. Well, I couldn't go to the bank and I still needed money. And so I noticed as I'm walking into the lobby of Sick Kids that there was like a bank machine that you can, of course, be charged a fee, but put your card in and get money out. And it also occurred to me, okay, I know that that was divine intervention. I know Archangel Michael was protecting me, but the scientist in me was like, let's just try this out. Was there just maybe a malfunction at the other bank? Let's just try this out. So I put my bank card in that bank machine. It worked. It fully worked. It wasn't demagnetized from being in my purse and coming into contact with something. It fully worked. And in that second, when my the machine was starting to work and everything was happening, it was like, oh my goodness. I was 28 at the time and I was working with the angelic realm consciously. And it was like, oh, thank you so much. Like, again, I've had so many experiences in my lifetime that for me to be asked, you don't need to ask me to trust my divine guidance. I trust my divine guidance, and that was Archangel Michael, absolutely, without a doubt, intervening in my day so that our bank account, we had a we have a joint bank account, my husband and I, our bank account wasn't cleared out, like, wow. And so there is my very concrete, real world experience of an angelic experience, another angelic experience, and this was Archangel Michael. So thank you, Robert, for asking that.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you, Cindy. How did you know it was Archangel Michael?
Um, download. Download, right? Like I'm 28 at this point and I started, well, from 5, I started developing my spiritual journey. So by the time I was 28, there was knowing coming in around that. There was
Awesome.
absolute knowing. Mhm.
That is phenomenal. I see someone putting their hand up. If you have a question, please write it in the chat and I will ask it for you. We have another question for you, Cindy, from Dana. And Dana says that spot on your walking path where you met the two guides 2 days in a row. She says, Dana wonders, do you feel it's a certain energy center or there's some reason that that particular spot was where they came to you?
Thank you, Dina, for asking that. Dana, I'm sorry, Dana, for asking that question. And isn't that really, really interesting? During the weather that isn't winter here in Toronto, that's just a little more concise. I am daily walking this nature route, and I'm often doing my spiritual practice while I'm walking in nature. So, yes. Now, perhaps you're asking from a point of view of, can other people go there and that energy center is available to them? Absolutely. Absolutely. For me, you know, it didn't register with me that that was a particularly, like, I'm walking into a spiritual vortex of expanded energy. It really felt like I was grounded in ordinary reality and this extraordinary event happened to me. So, yes, I believe that the energy, so this is at the Evergreen Brickworks here in Toronto that I walk through that gorgeous nature spot. And yes, I know that that place is a beautiful spiritual place. Of course, energies from the earth, energies from nature, spirits, and all of that are coming in too. They're all divine energies. Um, Clearly, that day it was, uh,
Mhm,
an energy point. Thank you
mhm.
for asking that question. Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you, Cindy. This is going to have to be the last question because of time. A few more of you have questions. Feel free to contact Cindy afterwards with them. She gave her email address.
Mhm.
Tim would like to ask you, he says, thank you very much. Many people have said thank you for the fabulous presentation. Tim would like to know, what is your main spiritual practice at this time? Do you meditate regularly and do you have any other methods that you practice right now?
Thank you, Tim, for asking that question. My primary spiritual practice is Reiki. It's something that is a part of my life every day. I'm in the energy every day. And both of my unitive mystical experiences were facilitated during a Reiki session. It, for me, resonates with me, and I know and completely understand that everyone will have their own way that they feel comfortable with to connect to spiritual energies. For me, primarily, it is Reiki. I do participate in the wild hunt during my in the fall, and actually we do one in the spring as well for my Celtic shamanic practice. I belong to Shamanism Without Borders. It is part of my community service work. It's in service to the world, and once a month we do shamanic journeying to wherever in the world needs shamanic healing energy. So I do that, but it's not a consistent practice. And for me, Reiki, so Reiki is a Japanese word. Rei means spiritually guided, and ki means life force energy. And for me, when I am in the Reiki energy, it is a meditative state. When I prepare myself to work with the Reiki energy, I am um, in a meditative state. And from that state, I am accessing higher spiritual consciousness. Now, I am trained in 3 different systems. I, I've been a Reiki master for 23 years, working with Reiki energy for 23 years. And so the more you work with something, of course, the energy comes in a greater capacity. Meditation, mindfulness is fantastic as well. So this this is what I do. Reiki is my primary spiritual practice, but whatever resonates with you, Tim, is what you should do. I do teach Reiki and I see clients and we do various other things, but it is what I was absolutely drawn to. And so I ask and invite everyone here today to just check in with themselves. What resonates with you? Because that's what you should investigate. Mhm.
Awesome. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you for an absolutely phenomenal, spiritually uplifting presentation. And I really commend you on having the courage to speak out and share about some of your very, very powerful spiritually transformative experiences. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here. And as I said earlier, grateful that this platform is available for people to share their stories because I can tell you I was silent about all of these things until you invited me to be public. So thank you so much.
Well, I'm glad if I helped enable that. Thank you, Cindy. I'm sure it's the divine that brought us together. Absolutely certain of that.